this old rain. I need a little something.
Well, we're going to try out this Canon. It's got a slightly better, it's got a better zoom. So I'm just going to load these last, I got 20 or 30 left to do here. Show how these slide through and find out how this thing records, if it records. 56.9 is our target here, and we've been hitting 56.92, so I switched it to 56.92, which just happens to be 2,700 feet per second flat with this setup. So let's see if I can continue my roll here. I just double charged one. Let's see if I can keep this sliding along. Finally got the big red, white, and blue Android gun shooting, and I'm going ahead and loading up. What I'm going to try is something completely different. I've got a box of match loads, and then when you're in a strange range, you always need to burn up some loads, just finding out what's going on, finding out the conditions. So I've got another entire box loaded up of Fireform loads, loaded to match grade. The only problem is they'll go in tight. They won't shoot quite as good, but it's going to be so close that they'll get buoy. They'll shoot well enough to be used as sighters and to find out how the bullets are flying and how the air is. Get on paper good. The other thing is, I'm pretty well set up for 600 yard, but if I take a run down south, there's a good chance that I'll be hitting on a 1,000 yard match instead of a 600, just because that's something that's down there. So this will allow me to have some kind of loads to get on target, and it won't be wasting the Fireform loads. I could just Fireform these in another gun. My problem is I don't really have a designated 300 WSM Fireform barrel right now, and I don't have any barrels that I really want to burn up. So I've been going to make one, but this is the 4th generation of reamer. Boy, I got way too much out of there. Took 3 kernels. And this particular reamer, I'm playing with a different freebore. I think I've got red, white, and blue dialed. It was shooting dots today. Not dots, but it was shooting little round groups that I can turn into dots, I think. So we're going to go ahead and use this as a match load so I don't spend the rest of my life burning that barrel up. And I've got a plan that may or may not work out. I mean, I took Fireform loads to a match a while back, but the gun wasn't working anyway, and I just thought I had done something to fix it, so I took Fireform loads to the match, and I failed miserably. So this time, I'm shooting those loads that I Fireformed and I've been using to bring the gun back in. And one of the things that I found with the WSM that's a little disconcerting is I just back the load down a grain, because these things will leak gas before the primers get loose, and I didn't really know that. This isn't a super tested and proven cartridge for me. This is I've been doing a lot of hunting guns with them, and I can make them shoot to the standard that I want. But this is my first go around with match stuff where I'm loading over and over and over and over. And hopefully sometime in this sequence I'm going to slide over and show you the bolt face. I'm going to try this camera out and see if it shows close-ups very well. Because my bolt face, boy, you get that in the shadow, it shows up pretty good, huh? I just threw away all of my workup loads, all of my workup cases. I just threw away a bunch of cases because I fried a pretty good ring around my bolt face. And I didn't like that. I didn't want that. That's not what I was going for. I want a load that's stable. I thought this load was stable. And the brass stabilized just fine, but it would open up until it was leaking gas around the primer and scorching the bolt face. And the primers are still going in nice and, not tight, but nice and firm. They weren't loose and sloppy by any means. So I made a mistake, and I pulled down and started retuning and found out, went through a bunch of histrionics with the big Android gun, including I got it shooting well enough that I put the lower plate back on the back and proved that it was humping and bumping around, and it just doesn't like that lower plate. Somehow that throws a kink into the system that it doesn't work. It shot just like all the time I spent with it before. So got her stripped down, and seems to be working good. And I just thought, well, as I'm getting to the end of this, I'm going to test this camera, show a little more of my loading and weighing technique. I've got a lot of people that just flat out don't believe I weigh every load to the kernel. And matter of fact, I do. Goofy as that may seem, and then of course those few that do believe me say it must take a tremendous amount of time. And yeah, okay, it takes some time, but I don't think it takes that much longer than this ChargeMaster does. As a matter of fact, as quick as I trade these things out, I'm most often waiting on the ChargeMaster. So, if you've ever loaded with a ChargeMaster, and if you haven't got that dialed in the way I do with 4 weighted pans, I really doubt that I'm that much slower than some of the commonly accepted methods out there. Can't say that. Now, compared to throwing charges, it's not even in the same ballpark. But the reason I want to do a sequence like this is because, again, I've posted on the inner tube through the years just how much these ChargeMasters vary. And I'm like, no, there's no way. Well, anybody who will take the time to sit through and watch just how much I'm having to adjust these. I've had overthrows that didn't beep or give me any indication or any warning. I've had overthrows, well, there's one that's 40.4 over. It's a long ways over, but I've had some clear up at, oh man, a lot higher than that, like not a grain maybe, but yeah, a grain. I've had some, I had a 58.1 in this sequence, and I had a bunch of high 57s. So, take that for what it is. This is video proof of a good smooth system. I'm not jacking anything around. I'm not out in the wind. I'm not, my hand going by it is not screwing it up. I think this is as controlled an environment as a person would ever be likely to load in. And I would just say that as far as using the ChargeMaster naked all by itself, I don't even know that I trust it for loading short-range bench rest. I personally, I've never taken the time to prove this, but I think I can beat this thing with a Herald measure. I have no reason to test it, and nobody that I have a vendetta or a bet with, so there's no reason for me to spend a bunch of time dinking around with it. But my guts tell me that I'm right there. I think I can get a Harold to come in awful close to this. I'm getting a little out of sequence here because I'm almost at the end. I'm down to the very last few, and I'm also thinking about how I'm going to get that bolt face into the camera. I really want to show you, just to maybe add a little interest to the video. This is actually about it. I've got the other pan set aside here. See, I've got 2 more pans. Oops, I just bumped that one, so I get to redo that one. Moving things around to show you here. I have 2 more pans sitting off camera that I roll into this rotation. I know I mentioned 4 pans. I don't know if it's possible at any point for you guys to see the 4 pans. There's the one I bumped, knocked some powder out of. Yeah, I just did it again. I got thinking and I got talking and I knew I was